My name is Patrick Myers. I live in Sedalia, Colorado. We're zone 3B, 4A, perhaps here. I've lived here for 7 years. I'm originally from New York, but I've lived in Colorado for most of my life. This is the greenhouse. I only use it about, maybe 3 months a year. I grow Cannas, which is a species of plant that a virus wiped out about 20 years ago. There's very few people that still have cannas that aren't infected. Most of the cannas that you buy in the stores, that you see around are infected with the virus because there's no law against importing infected ornamental plant material. And all the countries that produce these cannas all their fields are infected and they sell those plants here. I'm a horticulturist by trade, and so I've always used cannas in my plantings. Like when you see like a city display, or when you go to a botanic gardens and they have a beautiful annual display. So most of what I do and did was annuals. And when they disappeared, I lost a huge tool. I met somebody out in Pennsylvania that is a hybridizer and a plant collector, and she saves these cannas, finds them on little farms where they've survived, that are rural enough to where they weren't infected. And she starts to collect these. She brings plants in from all over the world. So 6 years ago, I got my first batch of plants from her, and I've been planting and propagating them to the point to where now I sell them. They're like a big tuber underground, and over the course of the growing season, they get very big and put up lots of shoots. And from each plant, I can get like 7 to 10 plants for the next season. This is what's called a chimera. So it's got 2 sets of chromosomes. So it's got a green leaf, yellow flower, red leaf, red flower. So you get these random streaks of color. The bloom will be yellow with streaks of red. Sometimes a stalk will come up and the blooms will all be red. Like this one, when I talk about, foliage interest, you get these stripes and this variation in the foliage. The variation in them is what makes them so desirable, and that's what's lost with what's sold now, what you see in Walmart, what you see in Home Depot. Those are just generic seed-grown cannas that have lost all the things that make this plant so great. They have to get a hard frost to tell that tuber underground, it's a modified stem, to go into storage mode. But if they freeze, they die. I think most cannas are zone 7, 8, so they have to be dug up, they have to be stored. I have a root cellar, luckily, in the basement. In very certain conditions, they have to stay between 35 and 50 degrees all winter long. With good humidity, but not too much or they'll rot, and it's very tricky. This greenhouse is instrumental to that because they need to be started in February for them to be available in May when most people plant annuals. So I had to adapt a heater so I could heat the greenhouse. And yeah, it's been phenomenally successful. I just absolutely love it to the point where I'm actually gonna buy a second one this summer, which is gonna go over here where the old turkey coop is. So I'm gonna flatten all that out and actually put in a 26 foot over there. So no, I'm super happy with it. So I started to figure out or do some research on what people are using to heat greenhouses and found this heater. So it's designed to be used in an off-grid home to heat the house. So it runs off propane. There's a vent, so it goes through the wall of the house, and there's a vent behind it. And then you would like plumb it into your propane tank, or you could run it off of 40 pound tanks like I do. So they sold a kit for very thin walls, which allowed me to actually attach it to the back door. I had to modify the back door a little bit. You can see it doesn't look like it's supposed to on the bottom, but I just, and of course it doesn't open with the heater there, but after just kind of looking at the door and looking at the heater, figured out the best way to do it that was secure, and modified the door, and it works great. And I can keep this greenhouse at 50 degrees when it's 0 outside. What I really liked about them was that they were rated for snow load and wind, which we get an awful lot of out here. It gets crazy windy. We had a windstorm last fall where up on top of the mountain there, they had 120-mile-an-hour wind gusts, and we easily had 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts here. And I was convinced I was going to lose the greenhouse. I came out every couple hours just to make sure it was still here. I thought I was going to lose my roof. I didn't sleep that night. I mean, it was the craziest thing I have ever been through. And the only thing that happened when I built the greenhouse, I didn't anchor it to the concrete. I just figured, you know, I put it on these 4x6s, and it's really heavy. I was like, well, that's not going anywhere. But that wind actually took this whole structure and moved it about 4 feet over the whole thing across the concrete. And so it's not exactly where I want it anymore, but it's too big to move. I tried, yeah, it was a crazy night. It was a crazy night, but it held up to that, no problem. It's been fantastic. It's been through the ringer and survived. You know, I really like the automatic louvers in the roof. It allows me to not worry about it getting too hot. So that was a good purchase, that add-on. If I had to do, I couldn't do it manually because I'm gone first thing in the morning. So the automatic louvers are great. You know, as funny as it sounds, when I first built the greenhouse, I was confused about what to do with these little, almost a little shelf there. It seemed like there was a way to expand the space a little bit, and I finally figured out, and building these kind of custom shelves, you know, so having that ability to build out a second shelf, obviously not something that was designed, but if it wasn't for that, if it was just the shape, I would either have to drill into it or mount it. And I think just the versatility of the whole thing, you know, that I could either mount it into the ground, I could set it in concrete. There was just so many different ways of being able to, of where you could put it. You know, like I said, I'm gonna build a second one, and it's gonna have to be anchored into the ground, and not having to engineer that myself or figure out how am I gonna do this is nice. So that all that was thought about.